Welcome to the first edition of the Spartan News. I'm Army Master Sergeant Thomas Wheeler, and I'll be your host. For this edition, we decided to tackle current events, so today we will talk about COVID-19, also known as the coronavirus, and what Task Force Spartan Shield is doing to protect the soldiers and units under its operational control. Today's guest is Brigadier General Thomas Spencer, the Deputy Commanding General for Support for Task Force Spartan, as well as the 42nd Infantry Division, and he is also leading the fight for the task force against COVID-19. Thank you for being here today, General Spencer. Sir, can you please share with us what the task force is doing to protect the soldiers of Task Force Spartan against COVID-19?
So, number one priority of CENTCOM commander, number one priority of the RSN commander is, protect the force. And number one priority of RCG is protect the force. So, COVID is a threat to the force. It's not a threat in a traditional way as far as an insurgent type activity. It's a threat to the force through infectious disease. So in order to mitigate that threat, we're being very proactive in our response as far as trying to identify any kind of action or what do I want to say, threat to the force through unique entry as far as the community-wise interactions, or just through the force and what we have within our camp. So we're kind of a unique organization in the fact that being in the military and forward deployed, we are already in a semi-quarantine state. But we have a contributing factor of so many of us living together and so closely in a confined area that there's a huge concern that, as the CG says, if COVID were to get inside the fence and the wire, we would be very susceptible to a fast spread of the disease or the infection. So in order to keep the virus at bay, we're being very proactive in what we do and monitoring throughout our multiple countries. And that's the other piece that kind of makes it a little bit challenging too, is it's just not about Kuwait. It's Iraq, it's Afghanistan, it's the UAE, Bahrain, Jordan, Saudi. So all those influences have an effect on the force.
Sir, talk to us about the COEC, or the COVID Emergency Operations Center.
So the COVID Emergency Operations Center is really your typical operations center focused on COVID. So it's working with all the ASGs in those, prior mentioned, countries where we have that, where they're answering to the operations center so we can gather the information and kind of track it and see where we might have an issue, or if we do have an issue, what can we take for a response. So we're looking at classes of supply, making sure there's enough food and water, looking at what the countries are doing as far as lines of communication for ground and air and what's happening movement-wise, and also with the changes in the mission throughout the area of interest, then affects how we respond, so that as we do move soldiers and equipment and supplies around, that all causes a potential increase in that threat to exposing others to COVID. So how do you mitigate it? And that's what they're working on as a way to mitigate and make sure we're taking care of the soldiers, so we can still accomplish our other mission, which is our primary mission of deterrence towards Iran.
Sir, tell us what the so what factor is. I mean, why is this such a big deal?
So, the so what factor is really pretty clear when you look at what's happening throughout the world, right? And specifically, if you look at New York, where in the U.S. it's kind of the epicenter of the infection and what's going on, the so what is you have, once again, a very large populace in a very condensed area, and then the spread of the virus occurs because you may be exposed to someone, and it could be a few days before you know. So 5 to 7 days before those symptoms, the person becomes symptomatic. That then causes a problem because of all the social interaction engagements that we do. So how do you mitigate that, right? And if it gets within the wire, we have certain things that we can do to mitigate. We have some social distancing like we're doing. We pulled out half the chairs in the mess halls, but we all eat at the same mess halls still, right? We can't change that. We've mitigated some of the contractors coming on post, the restaurants, the barbers, the AAFES employees. All that has been scaled back and or shut off in order to mitigate any kind of outside influence. So we can do that. We shut down the gyms because of tight confined areas, etc. So those are all mitigating factors to slow down any potential of the virus and to reduce the risk to the population. So the so what is, if it does get into the wire, it could exacerbate pretty quickly. And if we can stop that and not have that happen, which we've been very fortunate in, we've done that. That's number one. Number two, it creates a communication flow, which is really important, so that we know what's happening throughout the area of responsibility. And we have that set up now, and we're working, if it does happen in another country within our purview, what are we going to do? So it's a way to kind of keep tabs on it and to kind of work in if it were to happen in one of our other bases, how do we then flex to provide that kind of support to them? So there's a lot of different so what's, I guess. It all comes back to how do we protect the force and maintain our capability in order to do our operational mission.
So, sir, what would you like to say to the soldiers of Task Force Spartan?
Everything that happens with mitigation of COVID starts with the individual, right? So, hand washing, sanitizing, using hand sanitizer, no shaking hands, bump the elbows. Hey, the bottom line is our society has changed. Our society, whether we're forward deployed here in Kuwait or anywhere in the operating area, or we're back in the States, it's changed. And we have to accept that change. So, frequent washing of your hands, using hand sanitizer. I mean, I have it in my pocket right here. Keeping that distance. But, look around and police up your areas. If you're at a computer terminal and, it's a community terminal, clean off the terminal, clean the mouse, clean the phone. Look at your own personal phone and clean your phone. So that's probably one of the greatest risks is, the cell phone. I don't care where you go on any of the installations, soldiers have their phones in their hand. They need to clean it a couple of times a day. Little things like that will go a long way to stop the progression of the virus. So, being clean, taking that extra step and looking around your community, outside your living area. If you see trash and clean it up. Don't wait on maybe a custodian to clean your bathroom. Clean it. Maybe clean it once a day. Especially if it's a community bathroom, what I really recommend is if 4 or 5 people are sharing the same bathroom, break it up that one person does it one day and someone else the other day to offset that, so that you're keeping your facilities clean, especially if there's multiple people using the same items. We can beat this, right? It's just a function of how we look at this virus. It is a virus, so we don't have a vaccine. We don't have a known treatment. They're working on that. But the number one way to beat it is, to stay healthy. So, look at your hygiene, look at your personal health. Do those things that are right to keep yourself in the fight.
Thank you, General Spencer, for being with us today. That concludes this edition of the Spartan News. And for our audience out there, stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, and maintain social distancing. And remember, we're all in this together.